Between 90 and 99% of the world population are infected with the Epstein-Barr virus. The viral world is divided into two big groups. On the one hand, RNA viruses. This is the type of viruses influenza, mumps, dengue and yellow fever belong to. In fact, there are a great many and a very broad diversity. These viruses often cause acute infections whereupon the virus doesn't persist. And the opposite of these viruses, which don't persist, are DNA viruses. But in humans, most times, these DNA viruses are indeed persistent viruses. In general, these persistent DNA viruses, and this is essentially the case with the herpes viridae family that the EBV belongs to, these viruses persist throughout your entire life. You can't get rid of them. Between 90 and 99% of the world population are infected with the Epstein-Barr virus. The virus was discovered by Anthony Epstein and Yvonne Barr, both British. They did a play on words and said, "EveryBody's virus." EBV, Epstein-Barr virus. So Epstein and Barr were the discoverers of the virus in 1964, and by the play on words, the virus is now also referred to as everybody's virus. In the 70s, it was discovered that the virus was associated with infectious mononucleosis. The persistence of these viruses poses a number of problems. The bad news is that they are opportunistic pathogenic viruses, meaning that they take advantage of specific situations, in particular stress situations, to promote the development of serious diseases and, as far as the Epstein-Barr virus is concerned, also cancer. But the good news is that in most humans, these viruses persist in a completely asymptomatic way. This is rather unknown amongst the general public, as the virus does not manifest in the same evident way as measles or other influenzas. In fact, herpes comes from Greek. It comes from herpein, the Greek word for snake. And that really conveys the characteristics of these herpes viruses very well, which are persistent and recurrent. In other words, there are periods of recurrence. There are viral reactivations that can be either asymptomatic or symptomatic. Certain viruses, such as herpes type 1, herpes type 2, and of course CMV and EBV, reactivate many times. It's complex because of the large size of the EBV genome. Herpes viruses typically possess large genomes, over 150,000 nucleotides. These are the famous subunits that form the genomes, so they're large. RNA viruses, such as hepatitis C and HIV, are 10,000 nucleotides long. EBV is a virus that has two sides to it. The virus will attack a cell, will infect it, and destroy it. This is called the lytic cycle. And then, by a subtle game of regulation, this lytic virus evolves into a dormant virus. It will return to a dormant phase. Well, that's what this dormancy is called, and the virus gradually reduces its expression. A major handicap that we are faced with is that there are tests that are supposed to be effective. Some tests are indeed effective, highly sensitive, but they lack specificity. So this means it's difficult with the test to distinguish between the latent virus and the lytic virus. Very recently, it's been shown that long COVID is associated with, well, is influenced by the Epstein-Barr virus. If it's really proven that the EBV, I believe that, well, I think it would be extremely interesting to see this observation confirmed. There's a lot of talk about epigenetics lately. Essentially, it's how the environment changes our genome. It's very likely, I reckon, that our more or less toxic environment is able to trigger a reactivation of the Epstein-Barr virus. There are also dietary factors that can reactivate viruses. So the answer is, yes, it's likely that stress, be it toxic stress or chronic stress or whatever type, can reactivate the lytic phase of the virus.
puisse réactiver la forme lithique du virus. Je pense que
I think that
pour le
as for
BV,
EBV,
il passe à
well,
côté,
it
il passe
stands in the
après les autres,
background.
hein,
There is
il y a eu
HIV, there is
le
hepatitis
HIV,
C,
il
there
y
is
a eu l'hépatite
COVID-19.
C, il y a
With
eu
climate change, perhaps it will be arboviruses.
le
So it's
Covid-19,
in the
et
background
peut-être qu'il y aura
because, as I
les
said, it's a
arbovirus
very
qui seront
silent
potentiels.
virus.
Donc,
The EBV
il va
is
encore se passer
extremely
après les
inconspicuous.
autres, parce que, encore une fois, c'est un grand silencieux. Le BV est un
I
grand
believe
silencieux.
that
C'est le
persistent
virus
viruses will
persistant.
be one of the major issues
C'est un
in the
des grands
decades to come.
sujets, je pense, pour les décennies à venir.